physiological.
Anything else? No. Prep all day for a video and then start cutting down trees. I have to just do some background noise reduction. Hi, welcome to Carmen Cooks. Today we're going to talk about vitamin D metabolism and the crucial role vitamin D plays in neurodevelopment, as well as where some of the recommendations for vitamin D came from and the variable recommendations between different entities for vitamin D for pregnancy and lactation. So if you're pregnant or lactating or planning to be pregnant and you're interested in vitamin D and how that affects your birth outcomes, and not only the outcomes of you and the health of your baby, but the lifelong health of your adult child or your child, then stay tuned because it's some really interesting information. We're going to make a super simple recipe that is loved by Flash, and he's sitting right here to listen and make sure that I make it all right according to his specific instructions because he likes it made a certain way. I'm going to start out with some shrimp. Shrimp is an excellent pregnancy and lactation food, especially when it's wild shrimp like this shrimp. And even though this shrimp is deveined, they still left some of the vein in there. So I've got a bowl of filtered water, and I'm just going to, any ones that I see a vein, because these are big shrimp, I'm going to go ahead and take that out. And that'll give me a lot more time to talk to you because this is such a quick recipe. I could put it together in 2 minutes. You going to say something, Flash?
If you're not interested in eating blood, it's okay. You know, this blood is wild. And if you eat that blood, they won't do anything to you.
Okay, if you're going to have any video clips, if you want me to publish anything of you do need to be dressed, okay? This is a great dish for the lactation because it's high in vitamin E, and it can be hard for a lactating mother to meet all her vitamin E needs. For pregnancy, it's excellent because seafood has vitamin D in it, but as we'll discuss, the main sources of vitamin D need to be from the sunshine. But other than that, seafood and shrimp provide vitamin D, and the iodine in the shrimp is excellent for lactating mothers and pregnant mothers especially. Low iodine intake has been associated with lower levels of intelligence. And speaking of levels of intelligence, vitamin D is crucial for nervous system development, including cognitive function and brain function of your baby when they're born. And this is the vitamin D levels that you have during pregnancy influence their lifelong IQ, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I see so many children, and it's such a shame. They're not like Flash. It's like their light's not on. They're not awake. And it's funny that I noticed that because that observation of mine is further bolstered by anyone who reads Flash that says, wow, he's so awake, or que despierta está, está muy despierta. Siempre they get in this day. Okay. Now I'm getting all these little veins out because the waste is in there, and we want to minimize the waste that is in the shrimp's body. So we're taking out the back vein. There's still big front vein in the bottom. Vitamin D levels have been correlated to the synaptic plasticity, which is the ability of the brain to change in response to the environment. And that's really crucial because if you don't have synaptic plasticity, you can end up with someone who's a little bit too rigid and can't change around based on the environment, and their brain doesn't make changes as easily. And neurogenesis is also vitamin D. Vitamin D plays a role in neurogenesis, which is the development of new neurons. Synaptogenesis, which is the formation of synapses. So one neuron, this little star, will have lots of branches out, lots of dendrites out to many different neurons, and the connections between the neurons are synapses. And the more synapses a child can make, the smarter they can become. For example, putting together math formulas. And if your child can put together different ways to do a math problem, whether he adds the whole number and memorizes what 14 plus 14 is, or if he just learns 4 plus 4, or if he learns 14 plus 14, well then I have 16, and 14, that's 2 more. So just thinking different ways in adding the 2 up to the 14, or adding the 2 more to 28, 14, 14. So 14, 14, 14, 16, add 2 more. So that's just an example of the thought process that a child might have when doing math problems, and that thought process is increased and improved by increased synaptogenesis, which means vitamin D. And there's other neurodevelopmental outcomes for vitamin D: decreased incidence of depression, improved mental health later on after birth, a nicer infant, a calmer infant, a less anxious infant, less anxious child, and better mental health outcomes later is also possible if the mother has enough vitamin D. And I'm going to go put these shrimp into my boiling water and be right back. I have some very large avocados here. These are not Hass avocados, which are higher in fat, but I prefer the flavor of these avocados. They're lighter and they're much bigger. I have this one. It's super ready to eat.
And they're more nutritious, and they have the most vitamins than the ones that increase fat.
Vitamin D in infants, or the mother's vitamin D status, is associated with a number of neurodevelopmental outcomes in children, and especially relating to the cognitive and neurobiological aspects of the infant, including their behavior or their social interactions, for example, with their mother, their bonding ability. And so you can see that vitamin D is not just playing a discrete role in the development of the IQ, but also in regards to social neurodevelopmental outcomes. And for example, infants with higher vitamin D cord status at birth have better Bailey scores, which is just a measurement of infant function. I just like to cube it up instead of mashing it all up. Better vitamin D status in infants is better related to Bailey's mental development index, better psychomotor development index. Vitamin D status is also related to vitamin A status, so you need to have enough vitamin A along with enough vitamin D. Too low vitamin D can increase the risk of iron deficiency anemia during pregnancy. Vitamin D is particularly related to the immune health and functions, and if you want to know more about those aspects, you can check out my other video where we make a yummy fish stew. How many tomatoes should I put in your flash?
Good. I guess, and how much you say, I don't know how much protein you'll be able to over 100% centigrade. Or to my calculation, there's a 100% charge. Make sure you can put 1 more.
Okay, lots of tomatoes today. There's a wide discrepancy in the recommendations of vitamin D for pregnancy and lactation, and different entities recommend far different levels. And we'll talk about some of the reasons for that. The RDA for pregnancy and lactation is 600 IU per day. The Institute of Medicine recommends about 1,000 IU per day. And the Endocrine Society recommends 1,500 to 2,000 IU. Now, data from other scientists in the most recent studies, since 2011, there have been studies showing that the best levels for pregnant and lactating women are 2,000 to 400 for pregnancy and 6,000 to 6,400 IU for lactation. And it's a shame that the RDA is so low, because a lot of the studies showing that women needed these levels of vitamin D came in from studies in the early 2000s, from 2000 to 2011. And the most recent recommendations are 2020 to 2025 from the RDAs, which is the American Dietetics Association, and the USDA. I'm going to cut up a little onion, and I'm going to keep some of that to the side. I'm going to put a little bit in because Flash doesn't like a lot of onion. And I'm going to put some to the side to add to my bowl later. I don't know why there's such a big discrepancy in the recommendations for the RDAs, because there are so many factors, immune health, gene expression, neurodevelopment. You can have an increased risk of autism with lack of vitamin D. All these factors are showing how important it is for vitamin D in a wide range of systems. Obviously for calcium regulation, and the calcium regulation is the main way that vitamin D studies are done, and that's based on the calcium balance studies. In the studies that were used, AHRQ TUF study is measuring calcium density in the form of femoral head, which is kind of the gold standard, even though for vitamin D and calcium studies, even though vitamin D plays a lot of other roles in gene expression, neurodevelopment, infant health, immunity, fetal acceptance and recognition by the mother's body, fetal progression, but we don't have enough metrics. It's really the reason why a lot of these aspects are not included. What is more concerning to me, rather than the lack of these aspects being included, out of my trash bowl, my toes are getting cold, is that this population studies don't include pregnant and lactating women. And this is one of my biggest worries when viewing the studies, not so much that they didn't include the other aspects of vitamin D, regulation in the body, because some of these aspects are difficult to determine. Ooh, I have this organic, and I'm going to put a little zest. I love to put a little zest. And try not to do too high because all the zest just blows away, so I get down that low. And lemon zest is wonderful for the skin. Got that vitamin C in there. Oh, that smells amazing. Oh, it cheers me up from being annoyed about the man who got next door, who I guess is trimming something with an electric, doing his yard work, but I only have a little bit left light, and spent all day getting ready to make this video, from organizing this to thinking about what I was going to say, mental preparation, energetic preparation, doing yoga, doing my hair and makeup. That was an hour and a half. Eating and not eating twice, so I have blood sugar. The studies for determining the vitamin D in the population were based on a 24-hour recalls, which is not really, it's kind of the bare minimum. It's not the same as measuring blood levels, but it's used in place when biometric markers are not available. And biometric markers were not used when measuring people's supplement and food intake of vitamin D, and then measuring their calcium densities. Studies. But more concerning is the populations studied to determine pregnant women's needs included postmenopausal women, infants and children, and old men. I don't know about you, but my physiology is so different than an old man's. As a woman who's changing hormones on a daily basis and a different person from week to week in terms of my ability to be creative, to be intuitive, to do my mental work versus creative work. I'm so realizing these things change so much, and it's not me, it's my hormones, and that's just how I'm built. And to have a study that's determining my vitamin D needs, especially for pregnancy, that doesn't even include fertile women, is highly concerning to me. And then the fact that they're basing the vitamin D studies, or the vitamin D recommendations of 600 IU, minimum EAR of 400 IU, based on the average intake of the population that doesn't include us, is very disturbing. And a lot of this was really hard to elucidate and figure it out, and I don't know how the general public is even able to figure out where these things are coming from, because I spent over a month figuring out where all the data came from and had to read through 600 pages, and then only to finally find a little tiny line this big, and then go look online, and the study's not even available anymore. On the web page it says the study's been removed due to lack of federal funding. Highly concerning, highly concerning. Because we do not live in a system that engenders trust in the government and the entities, rather a trash bowl. Rather, we live in a society where money is the ruler and the god of Baal rules everything. So I'm going to add a little bit of these green onions because I just love them. I just like some in there. And it is concerning that the Endocrine Society, which is, a medical society that is listened to as expert organization that makes recommendations on the endocrine system, and your endocrine system is all your hormones and how those work together. And the fact that they're recommending 1,500 to 2,000 IU during pregnancy, just shows you that a recommendation of 600 IU is just not sufficient, and that the studies showing that the minimum amount for function, the RDA you have to recommend, especially in regards to vitamin D, that this is the minimum amount that allows for proper skeletal growth of your baby, that prevents growth defects and birth defects. And this is actually stated, this is not just me saying this, it's actually stated this vitamin D recommendation is the minimum needed for prevention of birth defects. But then if we look and say that, 41% of the population of women of childbearing age are deficient in vitamin D, and for African American women who absorb less vitamin D, the statistic is even higher, it's 97%. Now, is there a discrepancy between African American children and white children because of different treatment, or is it because physiologically the mothers don't have enough vitamin D because they absorb less vitamin D, and instead of making those recommendations, we're all, saying it's about race and that they have bad treatment or they're not treated right. And I wouldn't say one way or the other, this is not my opinion, I'm just saying for the sake of argument, let's start looking at the physiology before we're starting to look at other aspects. And let's start looking at the nutrients that women are taking in, and one of them that's severely deficient is vitamin D. And you can get sufficient vitamin D, 10,000 to 20,000. Let's mix this up and continue talking about the nutrient interactions of vitamin D. You need to have sufficient magnesium, vitamin K, and zinc for vitamin D to function. Magnesium is needed to activate the receptor. Vitamin K plays a wide role in vitamin D functioning. Vitamin K plays a role in vitamin D regulation of calcium, and zinc is required for a lot of the vitamin D receptors. These are zinc finger receptors. You have to have zinc bound to them for them to fully be responsive to vitamin D. I think one of the main things that's important to remember is that you must have much higher levels of vitamin D to function and for your baby to reach optimal genetic fitness, physical fitness, have high immune function, have high IQ, to have high social intelligence, thank God I stopped, and to be able to have proper development of the baby in all aspects of their functioning, because vitamin D is a hormone and it acts in more ways than just in regards to bones and bone strength, even though that's how they determine the vitamin D needs. And it's very important to remember that the vitamin D recommendations, add these beautiful shrimp in, are the bare minimum you need to prevent birth defects or to have gross skeletal abnormalities, and that there's a wide range of research. The research is just irrefutable, showing that pregnant women need 4,000 IU per day and higher. And now realize that 4,000 IU, you might say, well, that's the upper limit. You can't have higher than that. The upper limit is not based on data from pregnant women, and pregnant women have wide physiological changes in their body in regards to vitamin D regulation. Normally, vitamin D is regulated in the body by parathyroid hormone, calcium levels, and when calcium is low, parathyroid is released, and that signals more activation of the vitamin D inactive hormone to the active hormone, and then there's a feedback loop inhibiting parathyroid hormone. Now, none of this happens during pregnancy, and the pregnant woman is directly dependent upon the levels that she is taking in her body, not on hormonal regulation based on calcium levels. Though you do need to remember that these vitamin D levels you need are along with sufficient calcium levels. If you have low calcium intake, you're going to need even higher vitamin D levels. And that's very important to remember, that you need to have enough of calcium and vitamin D to get all your nutrients, as well as zinc. In terms of bones growth, you need sufficient vitamin K. If you're eating dark leafy greens, it's not an issue at all. You're going to get enough. Let's add some sea salt. Let me show you how I'm going to serve this. For a flash, I'm going to serve this on a bed of brown rice and quinoa as a big plate of food. And for me, I'm going to serve it on a large plate of chopped Chinese cabbage. Flash! Quit making exploding sounds, okay? Shh. Please, baby. Okay, so I'm going to put that there. And this is excellent for detoxing and improving my health. Flash, you need to just stay inside until I'm done, okay? Stay inside, because I told you not to be in the video here. And remember that vitamin D, the recommendations are based on data that does not include pregnant or lactating women. And it's very old research. And we have much newer research says that you need much higher levels. So it's important to get in the sun every day, get your belly out, expose that belly to the sun. Your baby's gonna love it. You'll feel them move around with the warmth. The placenta can actively make vitamin D, but remember, the placenta only is able to take up about 20% of vitamin D, active vitamin D or calcitriol in circulation. Other than that, it has to convert the inactive form to the active form via alpha hydroxylase, just an enzyme that the placenta expresses. It's also in your kidneys, but the placenta expresses it specifically in pregnancy to make sure that the baby is getting enough vitamin D. Remember, seafood is the only source of vitamin D in terms of food. Mushrooms can provide small levels and eggs can provide small levels, but for example, you would have to eat 200 eggs to make up for 20 minutes in the sunshine. So this is a mixture of brown rice and quinoa. I'm just going to fill up Flash's tummy. And Flash likes pickles in his, which actually I admit is quite tasty. I'm sprinkling red onions on top of mine. I'm going to show you just these. They're just sweet pickle slices. They taste quite delicious. And you can't make up for lack of calcium if you don't have sufficient vitamin D. You can't make up for lack of vitamin D by consuming sufficient calcium. It doesn't work that way. You have to have both nutrients together. But this would be a wonderful summer picnic, barbecue, outdoors by the pool recipe. Also, very, very easy dinner. If you don't feel like cooking and you just need to throw something together, this is where it's at. Because it's filling, it's got the extra protein, and when you serve it on top of that, you wouldn't think that you could serve guacamole like that. You do not have to have chips, guacamole, so you can just serve it just like that. If you want to know more about any of these aspects, you can check out my book, Nourishing Generations, where I go into detail about all the aspects I talked about today in terms of vitamin D regulation, and it covers even more, and it gives you all the references for the data I'm talking about, so you know that what I'm telling you comes from peer-reviewed research. And you can find this book on my website, link to my website in the bio, or you can also find this on Amazon as well. So, Nourishing Generations by Carmen Cook. I hope you enjoyed this fun and informative video and you learned something to help nourish you and future generations. And if all together, we work together to improve our individual health, we can improve the population health, and then we can rise to higher levels of consciousness. Oh, this water, why is it not on? Ah.